I want to talk a little bit about foodborne infections. Foodborne infections can be divided into two groups. The first are food intoxications, where you may not ingest the actual organism itself, but ingest the toxin produced by that organism, getting all the symptoms of food poisoning, we often call it. And the other is food infections, where you have to actually ingest the organism and have it multiply in your body to cause the symptoms. Probably the most famous, or at least most common food intoxication is staphylococcal food poisoning. This is common because about 30% of the population carries staph in their nasal passageways. From there, it can contaminate foods, and then that food can act as an incubation chamber to grow the staph up to high enough numbers that it can produce a sufficient amount of toxin. When you eat the food, you ingest that toxin and get pretty severe symptoms for up to about 24 hours. Sometimes it's called the 24-hour stomach flu or the 24-hour flu. This organism, therefore, is source or food handlers, and it likes to grow at a neutral pH, and it likes to grow in things like cream-filled pastries or potato or macaroni salad. Once mayonnaise gets mixed with potatoes or macaroni, the low pH that keeps mayonnaise from being infected by microbes is elevated, and it acts as a good medium for this. Staph can also be found in powdered milks and just a wide variety of sources, really, because it's the food handler that inoculates it by sneezing or coughing onto the food product or getting the material in their hands and then mixing the food. Once you ingest the food, within a couple of hours, the toxin has a chance to enter your system and cause some pretty severe symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea. Really, people who have staphylococcal food poisoning for a while just feel like they might die. The interesting thing about it, though, is it's so rarely fatal that we don't even keep statistics on it, except to note that we probably have a couple of million cases of staphylococcal food poisoning a year. Within 24 hours, symptoms have dissipated and it's over. The cousin to staphylococcal food poisoning is Clostridium perfringens food poisoning. But it's a little bit different. This organism likes to grow in meat and gravy products. It has a requirement for certain amino acids for its growth, and it likes an elevated temperature. Therefore, this type of food poisoning is associated often with reheated meat and gravy products or with reheated crock pot meat and gravy products. The symptoms are the same as staphylococcal food poisoning. The duration is the same, just the organism and the food product that it starts in. Of course, the one that terrifies everybody as far as food poisoning goes is botulism. Botulism is a devastating disease with a high fatality rate. Therefore, we go to great lengths to prevent botulism, and particularly in our commercial food supply. This organism has two interesting traits that allow it to cause some real problems if it goes unchecked. One, it is anaerobic, meaning it grows in containers without oxygen. And if you think about this, this is all of the canned food that we buy at the store, all of the bottled food that we produce at home. There's no oxygen in that. And number two, this organism has the ability to produce an endospore. Endospores are quite resistant to heating. In fact, you can boil endospores for an hour and you can't kill them. And so all the products where botulism is potentially an issue have to be heated above boiling. They have to be heated to 121 degrees centigrade for 15 to 20 minutes. This means they're heated either in a pressure cooker, which you would use at home in home canning, or in a retort, which is what they use in commercial canning. And not only do they have to be heated, but the standard heat treatment is 12D, meaning the assumption is that there are 10 to the 12th botulism spores in that can of tomato paste, and they heat it high enough and long enough to kill that many spores potentially. That's why botulism is so uncommon in our country now. We go to great lengths to prevent it. When you do get botulism, you ingest this toxin. It's a highly specific and it doesn't take much of it. 70 nanograms of this toxin can kill a human. The toxin binds irreversibly to the end of our nerves and prevents signals from going to one nerve to another. So You get paralysis with this, and eventually leads to death. Fortunately, with botulism, if you do get it, we produce anti-botulism antitoxin, and you take this and you get over it. There's another form of botulism that's rather interesting. It's found only in children under the age of 1. Here they ingest the spores of botulism. They do not have a microbiota in their intestines to prevent botulism from growing in their intestines. And so the organism grows, it secretes the toxin into the intestine, and slowly over time the infant becomes paralyzed and eventually dies. When it was first discovered, infant botulism was thought to be the cause of sudden infant death syndrome, but we know that's not true. We probably have more cases in the United States year in and year out of infant botulism than of the other type of botulism. If we go over to the other side of the spectrum and look at a couple of diseases where you have to ingest the actual organism, probably the one that gains the most notoriety is Salmonella. Salmonella is an organism found in the intestine of almost every animal. Humans, the ones that we normally worry about, are found in the intestines of pigs and cows and chickens. And of course, it can be found in the oviduct of chickens, so salmonella can contaminate eggs when they are produced by chickens. Once you ingest a salmonella organism, it grows in your intestines to sufficient numbers, produces some toxins, creates some real issues, diarrhea and other symptoms we associate with gastrointestinal infections. We have a high number of cases of salmonella each year. It's particularly problematic for the very young, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems. On top of that, another one that is gaining in notoriety is Campylobacter infections. Once again, you ingest this organism. It's a fecal organism and can cause the same kind of problems as salmonella. Most Campylobacter outbreaks are associated with the consumption of raw milk contaminated with Campylobacter. There are many other organisms that are transmitted by the fecal-oral route that can cause foodborne infections. These are just a few examples of those.